everyone, and welcome to the newest episode of Spill the RT. I am here with Josh. How are you, Josh?
Hello, Eamonn. Welcome back, folks. Another episode of Spilling All Across the Table. Fear of missing out. Don't do that.
Tell your friends. Absolutely. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel so that you don't miss out on any future episodes. Spill that RT. So, what have we got going on today, Josh?
So this first story, I think, is an interesting one because it affects a lot of different parts of our lives. It's kind of the spread of AI into the art world in general. What's your take on what's going on there, you think?
Well, I think that AI is a very topical conversation point right now, and I think we have a really exciting guest to help us talk about that. Will we bring him in?
There we go.
Hello.
Hi, Frank. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, thanks. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for joining us, and we're hoping that we can spill some RT with you today. Frank, we'll get to know a little bit about you further on in the show, but right now we're going to hit right into the main topic of the day, which is AI, artificial intelligence, or as Apple like to now call it themselves, Apple intelligence. They've already taken ownership of the whole situation.
They're going to trademark it, right?
Yes. And I was like, well, they'll trademark whatever they want. But of course, they are taking over with what they've already tried to crush our fears and all of our anxieties by taking away our beautiful raw materials and now introducing the amazing iPad that is the thinnest of them all. But they've actually reduced this video. I think it's gone now. They've taken it down.
Yeah, you got to wonder on the thinking behind this at the creative agency they hired to do this. Let's remove all other creative devices from the last, 10,000 years and just crush them in front of people. That's like you're crushing your hopes. In fact, that's a really good metaphor for AI in general, isn't it? Look, here's something you don't want that's taking away things you do, and now smile and shut up.
And I think this has been kind of an even bigger conversation over recent times with this letter to Adobe. And Frank, you brought this to our attention. Do you want to talk to us a little bit about what was going on here?
It's from the American Society of Media Photographers addressing Adobe's Firefly AI, and it's an open letter to Adobe, just reminding them that they have, built photography over the last 20 or 25 years. They are the backbone of digital photography. They position themselves that way. They built themselves into our media, and now their takeaway is what their tagline is: skip the photo shoot, use AI. And that's downright insulting to photographers and makers everywhere, I hope, anyway. It should be.
Yeah. You might as well say, skip the music lessons. Just leave it to AI.
Yeah,
right? Skip the living lessons. Just leave it to AI.
And that is the thing. I think AI now is taking over so many different creative elements and creating these generic reproductions of things, obviously from that database of lots of other material. And that does go to show for music, for art, for theatre, for film. There's so much material, multimedia-based material especially, that has been generated as a result of AI now. And people are calling it art. So I suppose that is the question. Is it art?
Well, if you have to train something on a training set, right, and then what you end up getting from that is like this nasty homogenization out of that training set of only the things that you've put in. Well, you can say, isn't that the same thing as what a human does? No, we don't have perfect memories, and we don't get everything jammed down our throat at once. And what the goal is not to have some plain vanilla reducing out all the edges and have it look like everything that's ever been, and yet simultaneously nothing that anybody wants at the same time.
And also considering that, they're stealing images from photographers and makers to make their images, it comes out as really insulting.
Yeah, it is. And I think as well, it comes back to the time when, there was a whole setup, a whole idea process, a whole studio kind of conversation about what way are we going to create this photograph, or even if it was for commercial use or if it was for an artistic use. There was always a process, and there was a lot more humans involved in the creation of that process. And now it's been completely stripped back to, okay, I'm going to sit at my Adobe Photoshop and I'm going to put into my generative AI and say, make me a picture of a dog sitting on a castle, and it's just, it will create that, it will look funky, and people are just generally using it because of just kind of maybe it's the slapdash society and people just having that very fast turnaround processing that's really necessary, and AI can achieve that.
Well, we're going to switch over now to the next story, right? And that's about Christie's and Sotheby's. And how can is there like a direct connection here, is there not, between like the woes of the art market and their inability to get what they want at auction, and at the same time they're firing people? And what is it that other sectors of the art society are trying to replace the artists with? AI, right? Like there's a direct connection between these things, don't you think?
Absolutely. No, I absolutely 100% agree. And I think it's just quite interesting as to what everybody else's viewpoint is in the visual art world as to whether that this is legitimate or not, or how do we assess the legitimacy of this artwork. And I think this really cool Venn diagram really maybe questions that as to where that might sit.
Looks like the kind of thing an AI would produce, in fact.
Yes.
Kind of on the mark, but not at the same time.
I would throw out that if AI is indeed affecting these auction houses, if one good thing comes out of it, turn the art market upside down, shake up things, make it a little bit different, I'm okay with that. But at the price we pay, I don't know.
Well, maybe we should say we've spilled this tea and we'll roll through to the next block, because I think, right, the issue is that a place like Christie and Sotheby's, they want to get their piece no matter what, right? And so if it's no longer about live humans making art, they don't necessarily care, because they just want their piece on whatever was being sold as art at that time. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. So as we kind of move swiftly along to Sotheby's and to our auction situation there, do you want to just talk a little bit about what's been happening there in the auction houses?
So, the art market itself is normal. When we're talking about the art market, what we mean is, right, the fine arts, particularly people that are like listed as established artists, because that ties to an actual record in public and how their canvases are actually selling, or pieces if they're 3D artists or whatever it might be. And, right, obviously a place like Christie's or Sotheby's, they're making their money because of what they help to transact and push through. And so sometimes it's high, sometimes it's low, but it's been a rare thing where they've actually been laying off their own employees based on what's happening in the art market. Mm-hmm. And to me, what that says is, right, that's kind of like a canary in the coal mine, because they're not able to sustain their business model. And so much of the art world's model revolves around or is dependent on their business model. So if they're having problems sustaining this, and that's why to me it's in direct connection to the AI, if they're having problems sustaining this, at the same time human artists are disappearing, well, this isn't like a random occurrence. It's two things that magically are affecting everything, just happen to happen at once. Like, no, they're obviously connected in some kind of way.
I think it was Sotheby's that have just let go of 30 of their staff only recently, and I think that was... It's a serious amount of people, and of those, I think 4 or 5 of those were NFT-based employees. Which is
that's another part of this wrinkle, right? Because they go ahead.
No, I'm just agreeing. There you have it. It's like it's all connected there.
Yeah, and they overinvested in that, right? Because when people had that one piece sell for almost $69 million plus the fees and everything, right? So it was like 80 million and change. Everyone was like, holy shit, we can make money from nothing. This is really literally printing money out of thin air. But that only works once, right? And it's kind of like worse than driving a car off the lot. The return on that immediately decreases, like virtually. And the fact that now the cryptocurrencies are getting robbed all the time, and the places that had the apes, the yacht ape series and things, they got ripped off. So none of that could be trusted, right? Well, Christie's had invested real money in real people into that whole market, and then it collapses. And so it's like private equity anywhere. It didn't work out. Oh, well, humans pay the price. We make our money back.
So we see that the kind of like NFTs have kind of somewhat taken a backseat, I think, in recent years, especially. And as a result, obviously, you can see that people are losing their jobs. Do you feel that this will happen with AI as well?
I think that's the intention. What I always comfort myself with is, EDM exists, and musicians haven't stopped being musicians, right? Like the propagation of music for free, people then double down on playing live, and that's an experience that you can't get any other way. So I think there will always be adaptation. Part of being human, right? Part of being alive is to be willing to evolve, whether you want to or not, because if you don't, you're dead. So I don't necessarily see AI as a bad thing in that kind of a pressure, but I didn't ask for it. Did you ask for it? Do you remember asking for AI in your life, Frank, as a photographer?
I certainly did not. I do think it has a place, though, but maybe not in exact authorship of art. Like if you're using it for research or using it for, some kind of primary source imagery to work from, I think that's okay. It does have a place, though, is all I'm trying to say.
The gallery in which you have presented work, Josh, actually in Tallinn recently, has a dedicated room just to AI generated work. They have a room that they focus on, especially for AI generated video work. And speaking to the director there, they had spoken about how they have allotted a huge amount of funding to continue that program and to develop that program. And they have the likes of art directors, especially in the US, come together to create these video pieces. And these video pieces are 100% made with AI. And they justify them by the scripts of prompts that they used to create these video pieces. And
that's the actual property in terms of copyright and IP, right? Is that the code, because that's what generates. Okay, but I used to do computer art way back in the 1980s because that's what we were doing. We were writing long scripts that would then create various kinds of ray tracings on the screen, right? And if you manipulate the numbers, you got something different. But that's a kind of blind by brute force kind of technique. Is that technically art? Well, sure, I guess. But at the end of the day, to me, it comes back to that sense of like the Benjaminian aura. Is there a sense of Anam, a sense of a human being that's giving something to other humans? Machines can talk to other machines. That's cool. But I'm not really interested in having machines talk to me, and I'm certainly not trying to talk to machines.
Is it that thing, though, that it just became something about being an art director then rather than an art maker?
Yeah. But that's what I mean. Like, there are people who make music, they make songs, and they don't play any actual instruments, right? And they put stuff out there that may sound good. Does that have substantially the same quality? As an analog musician, if you will, I would say no. And I'm not interested in stuff that's necessarily electronic. But it's affected it. Like, there are drummers that try to sound like they're drum machines now. There are guitarists that try to sound like they're synthesizers.
It is an interesting point, though. Like, where does a singer-songwriter come in there, right? Somebody who writes a song, writes the music for a performer, is that a connection there? Is it something totally different?
Well, you're a tool, right? But you're not having the displacement. Someone's still going to take that song and sing it on stage, right? With AI, it's quite the opposite. It's like the human completely steps back and just waits for the output.
Yeah.
And I think that to me, I think that's when we go through that door, that's where you're sort of checking the need. The tool is now in charge instead of being a tool.
Fair.
Let's bring this a little bit back to our auction house situations before we finish spilling that tea, and look at just a kind of about where this kind of fall in the auction house is going. Like, there was a Basquiat painting that sold for half the price that they expected in Sotheby's quite recently, and it just there was this article that spoke about that. And I think, is there going to be further issues in auction houses going forward, do you reckon?
Oh, yeah, but I don't think that it has necessarily ties to AI itself, right? Like, they have their own problems, because if you run up a market of any kind based on scarce resources, and then you're convincing people to keep bidding it up, eventually that's going to crash, right? That's called the GameStop. That's how it happens in the markets all the time, right? You deliberately run it up, you pump and dump it. And with Basquiat, that's kind of what happened. Now, the nice thing is, since there is truly a finite supply of real Basquiats, despite what happened in Florida, you can guarantee yourself that in the long term, the true artistic genius is going to, if you care about, right? I don't say artistic genius is tied to the money people are willing to pay for your shit, because there's lots of stuff that's never going to be intended to be up on auction in the first place, and that's the wrong way to value it. But if that's how you're looking at it, well, those comes and goes in terms of Basquiat aren't going to last for long. But that's why the warning to artists these days is don't end up at auction too soon, because they're going to pump and dump you. They'll take you from $20,000 a canvas to $200,000, trying to get to $2 million, and 18 months later, you'll be down at like $200 a canvas again, because they don't care what happens to you. They want their coffers filled. They want their process to continue.
And that's that tea spilt. So before we move on, don't forget, everyone, that we need you to like, subscribe, and follow our YouTube channel to keep up to date with all things New Collective and getting into spilling that RT with Josh and I, with all of those guests that we are going to bring on in the future.
Find 3 friends. Tell them before the day is over. They don't want to miss out. Neither do you.
Very good. Okay, so where are we swinging to next?
So our next block involves the Wu-Tang Clan, and actually a little backstory here. They made an album a few years ago, and the idea was there would be one copy made. And then someone would buy that one copy, And for the next, I believe, 100 years, only one person will be able to listen to that album. And so you may remember Martin Shkreli. He made this big splash in the United States. He was this supposed market whiz young kid who made the money and then bought the album and then promptly was arrested and ended up losing all of his money. So the album then was sold to somebody else for $2 million. And now it's now ended up where people are able to listen to select portions of the album for a price, basically. So like the idea was this is like a singular artwork in complete contrast to what we're talking about AI, right? Like this absolute multiplication of things that don't really exist ad infinitum to the end of the universe. This is one and one only, with access being incredibly limited. And so there's the kind of silliness of that one thing. Like, is that the alternative, is to truly create something that is only good as one object alone? And then B, okay, let's say you do that. Now you're kind of breaking that covenant by allowing people to have access to it in different ways, right? It's almost like humans, they have to peek under the lid. It's that Pandora's box thing. If it's there to flip, I got to open it, even though maybe I shouldn't.
It's really exciting, though, because I work with musicians all the time, and I see singers that are really kind of struggling to get themselves out there and try to kind of make a name for themselves. And likewise, then you see the likes of the Beyonce, the Ariana, the Taylor Swifts, that are producing huge amounts of tracks and getting a massive amount of streams, and everything is so accessible now, and like you're saturated with tracks here, there and everywhere. And this is just an alternative approach really of releasing music. But I think it's something that I think gives it a bit more authenticity, or it gives it that little bit more inaccessibility for you to try and maybe experience music in a different way.
Well, but part of what drives the way the market functions, right, is that it needs things of value that people want to pay for. And so, right, if you're saying on the one hand, look, we want to sort of democratize access to things, and we don't want to do it in a capitalist kind of way. On the other hand, you're creating singular objects that by kind of definition will go up in value because there is only one of them, right? It's driven by scarcity as a function. So it just seems kind of weird, unless that's the point, unless it is a kind of fuck you middle finger, we're going to do what we want anyway. And apparently it's like the greatest rap album ever, but no one has access to it, which is part of, it's either funny or like a deliberate withholding in a way, as an art project would.
We'll never know if it's the greatest album ever, right? We'll never find out.
Oh, in 100 years, though, we just won't be around to find out.
Right. We'll never know.
It can't be released until, I think, 80 years or 88 years or something.
88 years sounds right,
Yeah. But isn't it kind of cool, though, that this is only accessible to a certain amount of people? But then, I suppose, those tickets for this live event that's happening right now, actually, in New York, like, are they expensive?
Yeah, and even if, I guess the expense is one side of it. To me, the other issue is you're not really getting access to the full thing. You get selections, you get to hear little bits and bobs. So it's a curated kind of experience, right? And I think that if you really want to say, like what does this point to? It points to the way in which our society has become one of spectacle, and the way in which the experience of something is more important than the thing itself in many ways.
You have a picture here. Have a good...
Yeah, it comes with this whole, it's this whole ornate thing, and it's like what they do with the real fine liqueurs and things, and Baccarat crystal, and I get the whole aesthetic behind what they're doing, and one could argue it's actually a kind of, from like a rap world perspective, the fact that they created this is a way of saying, like, we have arrived because we were able to do this. We were capable of doing this, right? Like, this is the kind of thing that no one would ever have expected to happen. On the other hand, it's kind of silly if you think about it. You've made an album's worth of music that's supposedly the greatest album ever made, and ain't no one going to be able to hear it who's living.
It is also like the ultimate idea of editioning as well. One becomes more valuable than 10 become more valuable than, Although I do think that any way we can take more away from Martin Shkreli can't be a bad thing. Let's take it all again.
Absolutely. The more he loses, the happier we all are.
That's right.
You little twit.
I think that tea has been spilled. And thank you, Wu-Tang. So we're now going to just swiftly move into the story that just keeps on giving. And I think we have mentioned this a couple of times before, and we're going to just give you a little update. And here's a little video of what's been happening with King Charles, now also known as King Wallace.
So, now, I've said before, I am not a fan of people that are using art as ways of making their political statements, right? They try to damage them. They try to spill things. If they were not glass coverings, there would be real damage to some pieces. These folks at least did this smart. They did it in a way that it could be taken off.
Yes.
It's done with some savvy, right? It's like it's really poking at Charles because, right, he's supposedly this great lover of nature, protector of things. And so the blood red really does help to play into this. And again, if you don't have Wallace and Gromit on your side and you're in the UK, you really have kind of buggered this stuff up, don't you think?
Yes. I think it's really great. They did. You're right. It wasn't defamating in any way, like to the artworks themselves. It was sealed on by water-based paint or water-based sealer.
You could tell they thought about it, right?
Yeah.
It was not one of these idiots that just splashes shit up on the wall. Who cares what happens? They thought about how they were going to do it, and they were aware that someone was going to have to then get it off the piece.
I believe that the point was about the issues that he is having with RSPCA and the animal issues that he is neglecting.
Yeah, but he himself is a major landowner, right? Has
Yes.
put out and created various businesses that are supposedly supportive of sustainable agriculture, the environment, and animal health, and various things. And so, like I said, I don't have any problem with like making that kind of a pointed. It's the fact that they did it in a way that is not permanent, in a way that some of these other chuckleheads attempt. That I just
Unlike
that's what drives
the
me
Mona
nuts.
Lisa quite recently when they tried.
Right. It's a disturbing trend, and I'm glad that it's not destructive in this case. I mean, I'm all for protest. I think we probably all are. But, get your own platform.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Like, you don't like that, make your own, rather than trying to tear down other people.
No, and I think it's respecting the art as well. I suppose those who are protesting against art pieces are generally not protesting about the art itself or the artist who made the art. It's generally about the individuals that it's reflecting. And I just think that that's a really good way of doing it. And we saw that even in our conversations recently about the graffiti work that we were talking about and about street art that we spoke of, and how that even graffiti artists won't graffiti over other graffiti artists' work.
Respect is what matters.
Respect. Yeah.
How you do it is going to affect a lot of different things. So that's the update, folks. Spill.
So now, Frank, I think we're going to have a little chat with you and just get to know a little bit about you. So, Frank, tell us a little bit about yourself. Where'd you come from? What's your practice about? Tell us, who is Frank?
Hey, cool. Thanks for asking. So I am, I guess I say now, a mostly photographer from upstate New York in the Albany area. And the last couple of years, I've been working in a way of combining words and images in the style of other, photographers and artists before me. And what I'm trying to do in this series that we're going to look at a little bit anyway is I'm making a fairy tale, and at the end there is sort of a moral, like in a fable, but you can make of it what you will. In other works that I'm doing now, I'm trying to tell lies in a way that they seem to be true, and tell the truth in a way that seems to be lie, in order to blur those boundaries and make people sort of examine, their other truths that they think are true that may be lies. This happened to me recently with something that I learned as a child, and a certain thing that I held as a truth turned out to be not true. And then I got to decide, what do I do with it? Do I keep it? Do I discard it? I ended up discarding it. But I think it's an important question about discerning, especially discerning media, when we're lied to by our news sources so often. So what we just saw there was 4 parts of a series of 6 about a person who stumbles into a swamp and discovers a magical moose, and the moose demands a kiss and grants a wish. And there's a bit of poetry and a bit of prose and a 6-page narrative, 6-page, as it is. But all these images are digital photography printed on the page, and then the handwriting is done in pigment liner directly on the surface of the print. So that's my handwriting in my own, or my writing in my own handwriting.
And you were saying to us before you came on about the process of just even the building of the image itself. How you?
Yeah. Thanks for asking. That image is particularly interesting to me, as when I was flipping through the shoot afterwards. I stopped in my tracks and said, that's the weirdest thing I've ever seen. Just about. It's not a digitally imposed image. That's a straight photograph, but it looks like really bad Photoshop. So I think a lot of times the goal here is to make a photograph that's so weird that people can't figure out how you made it. And in this case, it's just I hung the elk head on the tree and took the picture. But I don't know what it is. Something in the depth of field makes it feel like it's just floating there.
It seems to me that much of what you deal with is a question of like the uncanny valley of how does it get weird, but it's weird enough that it reads as real or true, right? Rather than something that's like put together to seem that it's real.
Right. It could be true. And that image sort of speaks for the whole thing, I think.
And how do you conceptualize that authenticity when you're trying to think about it?
I've moved on from this. This piece is 6 images. I've since animated them, and just simple animations in Procreate. It's fun. It's kind of snappy, and I then read the story as the text appears on the screen. So taking this idea of these images and pushing it, further in another direction as well.
They become kind of like fables, right? Like sort of like dreamscapes. They seem to me almost like dreamy, floaty, not quite certain. Is this really what's happening or not?
Yeah, some are fairy tales, and some are, like you said, toe that line between reality and non-reality.
I think they're really beautiful images, and I'm looking forward to just reading through some of the text as well in the future. And the animation sounds amazing. And did you use those images that we've seen just now? Are they part of that animation? That's
right, exactly what you're saying. It's just simple voice, spoken word. And as I finish reading the page, I move to the next image and start animating on the drawing.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So like in this image, I couldn't, I'm also working around the idea that I couldn't get a hold of a real moose to work with. Their agents are tough. So I ended up wanting to draw in the moose. And so I drew in the moose in the background, and then ended up by the time I'm done reading that piece, the entire page is covered in pink marks.
That's kind of great,
using pink as a symbol of the love of the moose, or the magic of the moose.
And is there a significance to the pink?
No, I just thought it was an interesting idea. Just to sometimes in a couple of these other ones, I'll use one color to represent each character, and as each character in the narration is doing its thing, like the red hearts will appear, black hearts will appear, or something like that. So in this case, the pink just represents the moose and the moose's actions. How do
we get to see your work, or is there anything coming up, or how do we find out more about Frank?
We do have the SVA MFA Art Practice second year exhibit coming up here in Midtown at the address 133 West 21st Street. Woo! That's in Manhattan. That's going to open July 10th. We're going to have a reception July 11th, 6 to 8. And that video that we're just discussing will be on display there.
So that'll be up for several weeks.
Right. That'll be up through, I believe, the end of July.
Amazing. Excellent. Great. Well, look, once that...
Thank you for coming on today, Frank.
We'll share information about that across our own social channels as well. And
brilliant. Thank you. Yeah, thanks for having me, guys.
No bother.
Thank you for joining us. We appreciate it.
Thank you very much for watching, everyone. We are so thrilled with the amount of people that are tuning in, and do continue to share it with all of your friends and family, and do, as Josh says,
follow, like, share. Don't miss out. It'll wake you up at 3 a.m. I just missed the last episode. I just got it. I gotta have it. I need it right now.
I know.
Do it before the day is over.
You crave spilling the RT every day, Josh. Spill it. Okay,
so thank you, folks.
The next few weeks, we have some exciting guests coming up, so do make sure that you tune in, and looking forward to checking all of our new art gossip. So do spread the word. Let us all know how you're finding this too in the comments below, and be sure to check us out on www.newacollective.com. That's all from us. Thank you very much, and we'll talk to you soon.